Hi guys, it's Troy at the Full Setup here, back with another video for you. Now recently I did a video where we pitched the GT 1030 against a GTX 760, basically to show that when it comes to buying graphics cards on a budget, you are much better off buying a used graphics card because you will get loads more FPS. But there was a couple of buts. When you look at the power consumption of those two graphics cards, there is a huge gulf. That GTX 760 used an 8+6 pin power connector. Also, I paired it with a Ryzen 1700 to eliminate any sort of CPU bottlenecks. It was not going to bottleneck with any of those two graphics cards, but I understand a lot of people that would be shopping on that budget wouldn't have a processor that's not going to bottleneck their graphics card. On a few games it will bottleneck. So I've decided to expand that today. We're going to use two brand new $75 graphics cards, and we're going to pair it with two graphics cards that I picked up for a similar price point, and I'm going to pair them with the Intel G4560 so we can take a little look about if there's any bottlenecks at that price point when you're buying a used graphics card as well. Now also in that video, there was a competition in that video which ends on the 25th of July where I'm giving away a GTX 760. I'm also actually going to add one of the graphics cards from this video to that competition, so the winner of that competition will be able to pick one of two graphics cards. Anyway, moving on to the graphics cards then, representing Team Red for the brand new graphics card, we have the Msi RX 550 Pulse. Now this has 512 stream processors, a max boost of 1206 megahertz. We've got 2GB of GDDR5 running at 7GB per second on a 128-bit memory bus, and it's got 65W TDP. There is no 6-pin power required for this graphics card. You can just plug it in your PC and it's ready to go, and I picked it up for £75 on Amazon. Well, what about Team Green then? Well, we have the GT 1030. Now it's got 384 CUDA cores. We've got a maximum boost clock of 1518 megahertz, although I found because of GPU Boost 3.0 actually boosting higher, it's sat around 1750 megahertz. It's got 2GB of GDDR5 running at 6GB per second, but it's on a really tiny 64-bit memory bus, but it's got an ultra low 30W TDP. Again, no 6-pin power required. Now I picked this graphics card up for £70 from Amazon again, but you can pick them up as low as like 55 or 60, so you can save some money there. Well, what about the used graphics cards then? Well, for Team Green, I have the Asus GTX 750Ti. Now this features 640 CUDA cores with a max boost of 1150 megahertz, so I found mine sat at about 1250. It comes with 2GB of GDDR5 at 5.4GB per second on a 128-bit memory bus. Now this graphics card does have a 65W TDP. That's what the 750Ti is rated at, but this one comes with a 6-pin power, so you can do some extended overclocking. It was £70 used. You can pick these up from CEX in the UK, so you'll get a 2-year warranty with that as well, so that's really good. Well, finding a used graphics card on Team Red that wasn't going to suck up loads of power and didn't have an inflated price because the GPU mining was actually quite hard, and I picked up this graphics card for a fantastic £65, and this is the Msi R7 370 gaming. It's got 1024 stream processors. There's a max boost clock of 1050 in overclock mode, but I'm currently running just the standard mode of 1030. We've got 2GB of GDDR5 running at 5.6GB per second or 5.7 in overclock mode, and it's on a 256-bit memory bus, and this graphics card features 110W TDP. PC specifications then, well, I have the Intel G4560, everybody's favourite budget CPU, 2 cores, 4 threads. We're running on a H110 motherboard. I've got 16GB of 3200 MHz RAM, but I'm currently running that at 2400 MHz. My CPU cooler is a Hyper 212 Evo with 2 Corsair AF120 fans, like LED fans. You would be fine using a stock cooler, I just like quiet. And for the storage, we have 64GB SSD for the OS and a 1TB HDD for the games. The PSU is an EVGA 500W white, and I'm running it all on a Dimestech test bench. Time to finally put these graphics cards to the test now. Now for the benchmarks, I'm running everything at 1080p low settings with no AA, just to give the 1030 and 550 a little bit of a fighting chance. On the screen here you can see the Heaven benchmark, and they all score very well at this. This is quite an old benchmark now. We have an average of 77.3 for the 1030. The 550 is getting 89.9. Both the 750 Ti and R7 370 are over 100 FPS. But if you have a look at the minimums, they're all very quite close together. We've got the 1030 with 22.4 and then the GTX 750 Ti with 29. So the minimums are all very close there. Well, that's Heaven benchmark. How about we move over to some games then? Well, I ran the Cry Primal benchmark. And as we can see, the 1030 and RX 550 are sort of definitely within a playable FPS range. Maybe not playable to me, but I know a lot of people will be happy playing the game at that FPS. Personally, with an average of 35 and 42, I would maybe consider running it at 720p, but that's the decision's all yours there. The 750 Ti is definitely showing its age. It didn't score much higher than the RX 550 with an average of 48 FPS and a minimum of 45, but that's a lot more playable. Well, look at the R7 370. Its minimum FPS was 60, which is perfect, and we have an average of 65. You could probably put a few medium settings in there, so it's very good to see from the R7 370, as it was the cheapest graphics card I purchased today. Shadow of Mordor, every graphics card can play this game flawlessly. We have the GT 1030 with an average of 58.5 and a minimum of 41.2. But look at the RX 550, it's getting 76.8 FPS with a minimum of 57.8. You could definitely probably run this game on medium. Well, as for the 750 Ti and the R7 370, we've got an 86.7 and 110.3 FPS. Both of the minimums are over 60 FPS. I definitely think you'd be playing this game on a mixture of medium to high settings at 1080p. Rise of the Tomb Raider has always been a very intensive benchmark when you're running it at maxed out settings. So how does it run low at 1080p with no AA? Well, the GT 1030 and RX 550 definitely score good average FPSs. We've got 43 and 50 respectively, but if you have a look at the minimums there of 19.5 and 11.2, that is definitely causing some issues. Now, the 750 Ti and the R7 370 do score a lot better averages at 55.6 and 66.9, but again, look at the minimums there, 24.8 and 23.4. Now, that was all at DirectX 11, and I decided that I'm going to test the AMD cards at DirectX 12 to see if they improve the minimums, and as you can see here, the average FPS doesn't really overly improve on any of them, but if you look at the RX 550, it jumps from 11.2 FPS to 31.6, and the R7 370 jumps from 23.4 to 34 for the minimum. So this game is definitely going to have to be played at DirectX 12 with AMD cards, and I'm shocked at how well the RX 550 has actually improved at DirectX 12. Time to move on to the most intensive benchmark I have for you today, and that is Ghost Recon Wildlands. Now, the issue with this is at 1080p, even at low settings with no AA on, you're pretty much maxing out the 2GB VRAM on all of these cards, and that definitely shows when you have a look at the FPS. So the 1030 and the 550 get 36.2 and 39.7 as averages, which is definitely playable, but the minimums are dipping under 30, which is something that I never really like to do. The 750 Ti isn't really that much better. We've got an average of 43.2 and a minimum of 31.8. So, personal opinion, I would run that game with all three of those graphics cards at 720p if you're, someone that needs to have 60 FPS. Again, probably the R7 370 I might, but it does score an average of 59.2, which is near enough 60 FPS, but the minimums are at 35.5. So yeah, definitely, do you know what? For all of those cards with that game, I would run it at 720p. Power consumption then for the idle, as you can see, all of the wattage here is very low indeed. We've got the GT 1030, at 41 watts, and then we have the R7 370 only using 78 watts. That's all very good idle. I'm running that on a power saving profile. Now, moving on to load. Now, I'm running in high performance mode. I've got all the fans maxed out, and these are all gaming wattage benchmarks as well. I did this whilst running Rise of the Tomb Raider benchmark, and as you can see, the GT 1030 is under 100 watts of power, which is absolutely brilliant. The RX 550, again, 116 watts. You can plug these graphics cards into any computer going, and it should run perfectly fine. Well, the 750 Ti wasn't far off the RX 550, and you can get 750 Ti variants that don't need the 6-pin power as well. So again, very low. But the R7 370, that's an older AMD card. It's not Polaris. It should be power hungry. 190 watts of power again, being sucked from that, so you could probably got some room for overclocking. If you've got a pre-built PC that's got a 300 watt power supply, you can run all these graphics cards in there. So there are the 1080p gaming scores, and the R7 370 was the clear winner. The 750 Ti, again, both of those perform better than these brand new $75 graphics cards. And I know what a lot of you are thinking, you know, I should have compared the GT 1030 and RX 550 to integrated graphics card. These are only esports graphics cards. We shouldn't expect them to do 1080p gameplay. But any graphics card you buy is going to be better than an integrated graphics card, and that's why I decided not to do that today, and that's why I haven't run loads of esports titles today. But here you can see on the screen the RX 550 running Overwatch at high settings. It does run it really well, but I still wouldn't recommend that you buy any of those graphics cards. I understand I speak to a global audience, and for a lot of people $75 is a massive amount of money to save up. But when you compare them, if you just wanted new graphics cards to something like the RX 560 and the GTX 1050 that are 25% more, you actually get 50% performance, and you should be able to play any game at 1080p, not just esports titles. What about the 750 Ti and R7 370 then? Well, the 750 Ti is definitely starting to show its age, and the R7 370 was the clear winner. The power consumption on them was really low as well. If you've got a 300 watt power supply, if you've got a spare Molex or two so you can add an adapter, you could run both of these graphics cards. But they're not without their own flaws when pairing it with a low budget CPU, because the Intel G4560 on CPU intensive games will run into bottlenecks. So anyone that doesn't know what a bottleneck is, here you can see my overlay in the top left hand corner. Now the GPU usage should always be at about 100%. You can see here with the 750 Ti on Battlefield 1 in intensive areas, that is really dropping down. It's almost at some points an unplayable experience because that's where the processor just can't handle it. It's the same for the R7 370 as well. Even on GTA 5 I was finding in CPU intensive areas of the game that I was experiencing bottlenecks, but I would still go and buy these graphics cards over the $75 variants. So what would you pick? I'd really be interested in what graphics card you'd pick. Would you buy the GT 1030 or the RX 550, or would you dip into the second-hand market, take a risk on a used graphics card and get much more improved FPS? Let me know in the comments below. Moving on to the graphics card competition. Now currently I am running a GTX 760 giveaway which finishes on the 25th of July. Now it's still the same to enter, and anyone that's entered, don't worry, you apply for this as well. You need to go over to my YouTube channel, you need to subscribe, you need to then go over to my Facebook page, leave a like and drop me a message. I will set up a competition email for next month's competition. But a lot of you have messaged me about that and said, I'd really like the 760, but it's just too power hungry, and I get that. Now, sadly, I'm still the only other graphics card I'm going to offer into the mix will be the most power hungry graphics card today, and that's the R7 370. So the winner of that competition gets to decide between either the GTX 760 or the R7 370. You can pick whatever graphics card you want. Personally, the 760, it's a blower design. It does run a bit hot and it does need the extra power, but it does come with CUDA for anyone that wants to get into video editing. The R7 370 runs incredibly cool. It uses a lot less power. There's the option of FreeSync, and probably going forward the drivers would be supported more. So yeah, whoever wants one of those two graphics cards, when I pick the winner, I will send you a message and then you can pick one of two. Anyway, that's just it from me today. I'm sorry it's a bit of a longer video than normal. It's the first time I've done a video like sort of this large, so I'll try and compress it for the next one. If you like it, tell me why. If you don't like it, tell me why. And please make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all really soon.